Hey guys, Jamie here from the Flow Genome Project in sunny west side Austin, Texas. It is Saturday of Halloween weekend, so I was just kind of thinking about a topic that we talk about a lot, but obviously with all the fancy dress up this weekend, kind of makes good sense to talk about, which is fundamentally the notion of avatars, or basically alternate, better, badass, more fun, mythic, enjoyable, playful versions of ourselves, and what role those can play in both us getting to more flow states, more ecstasis, or those moments outside ourselves. Why should it matter, and how can it potentially even accelerate our growth and development? So please turn on your sound. If you guys are just browsing, that's totally fine. And let's get started. So the first thing is, let's just define some terms. So again, this is Halloween weekend, so it's up. Everybody's thinking about alter egos, right, and ways to play with how we represent ourselves to the world. An avatar is literally that. And that is fundamentally a conception or a construct of ourselves. And these days, in the last 5 years in particular, with social media, but not just social media, a bunch of other forms, gaming, especially massive multiplayer online games. If anybody's heard of the term even cosplay, which is still one I have to wrap my head around, but I suppose it means costume play, and things like Comic-Con and all that kind of stuff, all the way out to our own social media, right? The whole notion of that the versions of ourselves that we portray on social media are actually carefully constructed. We don't necessarily have like fairy tales and and overt signs of disguise or augmentation, but we're constantly selecting not our lowest moments but our best moments, not our bowl of cereal at 11 o'clock at night but our wonderful brunch dish, all of the always our awesome family vacations or personal vacations, etc. So even on the micro level within social media, we curate our avatar. Who do we want to represent to the world? On a more ambitious and creative level, whether it's in virtual worlds like video games, all the way back to Second Life, but all the way forward these days to I am an orc with 43, level 43 with hit points and a magic shield, to kind of more interestingly, real-time, real-life stuff like cosplay and even like Burning Man. So we can use that as an example of potentially kind of the apotheosis or high point of what does it mean to play with different roles of selfhood, then how do they actually then connect us to ecstasis? So a couple of if that's an okay working definition for avatars, which is these are our mythic, imaginal, playful variants of ourselves. We generally don't dress up in something or pretend to be something that is not some version that we'd like to check out more, right? Even if it's a superhero or a sexy ghost, whatever it is, right? The classic is the sort of middle school to high school girls who all find ways to basically circumvent slut shaming, right, for one night a year by wearing fishnets, crazy racy stuff, and they get to be whatever it is, a witch, a cat, something or other, right? So we all are playing with the boundaries of selfhood as we adorn ourselves, as we come up with costumes. And what does that do? Well, for one night, right, the night of Halloween, there's usually a raging party, or we're going out trick-or-treating, whatever. Probably not that much. I mean, it could be a fun evening. Maybe we act out a little bit more. Even the current clowning scares, right, of guys running around in clown costumes, right? That's the dark side of avatardom, which is that once I hide behind a mask, I get to express all kinds of forbidden or repressed versions of myself. I get to scare people, I get to be violent, I get to be aggressive. I don't have to be personally responsible, which is not like, in some respects you could say the clown epidemic in this last fall, if there even was one, is almost the real-life 3D equivalent of online trolls. It's basically what online trolls do when they go offline, and they fundamentally dress up like clowns, right? So we can see that there's both a higher capacity, we can lift ourselves up by who we playfully explore becoming, and there's also a repressive capacity which we can actually drop down into lower versions of ourselves when we costume. So, this weekend, as you guys choose your costumes, just ask yourself, hey, is there any significance? There could be none. It could be like what I could throw together based on my closet and our leftover shit from last year. It could be something topical, so I'm just trying to be funny or make a really cool joke. But for a lot of people, there's a selection of, well, who do I want to be this year? Who do I want to play with and explore being? And so, consider that for yourself. Do I choose towards the dark? Do I choose towards the light as far as just which side of the archetypal fence do I go? Do I like to be scary and dark, right? Or do I like to be, something else? And if so, why? Do I become more sexual, more physical, more magical, more whatever? Where are you drawn? As you have these opportunities. Now, one of the examples that for me is the most fascinating is the event of Burning Man for a couple of reasons. One, people are going about fundamentally the duration, right? It's not just a single night. It is a week at a time. And because of the collective nature of the event, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a music and arts festival out in the Nevada desert. It's all collaborative. It's, you buy a ticket, but then everybody shows up and makes the event. There's no performance and performers. Everybody is the performance. And so people, for a week at a time, this is closer to kind of Renaissance fair kind of stuff, people are inhabiting alter egos. And what you get to see there, and also having lots of experiences of ecstasis, lots of non-ordinary states of consciousness, lots of interesting and interactive art and media, music, dance, all that kind of stuff. But then they are actually inhabiting for periods of time. Always a signifier, people have what's known as playa names, or names that they adopt for their alter egos the entire time they're out at that festival. So don't think of me as my waking self, working stiff back in San Francisco or LA. I am Sparkle Pony or something, right? Ridiculous. And it can be playful, it can be irreverent, it can be all these things. But what can happen is that if for an entire week people are literally not referring to me by my given name, they're referring to me by my chosen name. I am not wearing all the signs and signifiers of contemporary society. So you're not looking at me and saying, oh, he's got a Rolex watch and an Armani suit or a cheap Target button down, right? None of the superego judgings of the boxes I normally fit into. And instead, this sense of I'm out of time, I'm out of culture, I'm out of place. And in those out of time, out of culture, out of places, I gain a little bit more wiggle room and a little bit more freedom. And so the questions become is how can that be, fundamentally, a powerful, if somewhat underlooked, technique of ecstasy or technique of ecstasis. We get to set aside who we are. Even people, for instance, who go on global travel and they realize, I am now just considered an American. Right, and they're like, who I was and the story behind me is not the same. I've got my backpack, I've got my poncho, I've got whatever the clothes are I bought in the little bazaars and markets, and I am getting to enact a different version of myself. So we do it in 1,000 different ways. Again, we do it online. We do it online all the time unconsciously. We are constantly preparing and presenting a very carefully scripted costume of our life, a variant, a version that is not like what the 24/7 looks like. It's much more just the high points and anybody else watching our lives. In fact, I don't know if you guys have had this experience. I've been constantly surprised by it, but where you have just hung out with a near and dear friend, they have shared with you they're going through a tough time of some kind. And then you see their Facebook posts or their Instagram posts for the next 2 to 3 days. And it's, yay, love, light, #blessed. And you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I know you're wrecked right now. And meanwhile, who the hell is that you're representing in a social space? Now, on purpose, right, we can take command of this. And by the way, there's lots of sociologists and there's lots of sort of anthropologists, psychologists in academia that are now studying our social media avatars and the delta, but the gap between who we think we are, who we say we are, and how we actually are in our life. But let's also acknowledge the more fun and playful parts. What if we go all out? And something that can happen at Burning Man, this is an example that's topical for me, just because I've been watching it for a few years. But when people first go, it's not unlike Halloween costumes. They're like, oh, give me the Viking helmet, or give me the super sexy slutty kitty outfit, or whatever. And people really think it's costuming. And then after people go through that experience a few times, they realize, oh wow, in fact, costumes feel as fake as they were made, right? If they were just manufactured in China, if I'm just slapping on some shit to look funky or crazy at the party, that ceases to feel right. And what many, many people do is over time, they move from sort of costuming to adornment. And you move from clothing to vestments. And what that can mean is it's sort of like, well, I'm not going to hide like the clowns behind a mask or behind a costume and pretend to be something I'm not. I'm actually going to use my adornment, right, my vestments, what I wear, to reflect the highest, most mythic possible version of myself. And when that happens, you literally, you sort of have to kind of choose this stuff. You can't just sort of pick it off a rack. You can't just order it online in one click. It's a bit more of a patient process. And that is an aligning of our outsides, the clothing and the sort of and the jewelry or whatever else it is, with the inside, and not and in the highest possible way. So how do I use costuming, right, to actually lead the exploration of my inner state, and how do I use that to let me go forth, represent someone a little bigger, a little bit more interesting. Right, again, a little bit more mythic or archetypal, and crucially, have others interact with me from that place. So our ability these days to create and inhabit avatars, right, or the higher and best, most creative and imaginal versions of ourselves, not like the movie, by the way, sort of the idea of, right, these I mean, an angel is an avatar. Avatars, in fact, in sort of religious history are often sort of like superhumans, right? They're the badasses, the ones we look to for guidance. So we have the chance these days to step outside our regular Clark Kent suits more often than not. We have permission to play in a bunch of different domains, virtual, digital, and actual. And in each of those, we just get a little bit more perspective on who we are and who we can become. And so that can become a fascinating opportunity for all of us. So now, what's the downside? Well, the downside is especially like in the Burning Man scene. This is a classic one, which is kind of at first dressing like this, dressing in those ways, new ways, different ways, more explorative, sexy, provocative, what the hell ever it is, can be very liberating. But very quickly, you can, as the skin of culture forms on the cream, we realize, oh, there's a subtle code here. There's a little bit of one-upmanship. There are standards and norms. And suddenly the very avatar, adornment that was initially so liberating can eventually just become the next level of fashion and the next level of social compliance. And what is, jokingly referred to, again, on sort of in burner culture as the leather and feather scene, which is, every douchebag guy's got a fedora with a fucking feather sticking out, and the girls are all wearing, wild-ass, sort of Mad Maxy bondage leather stuff, and, it's just like, and then that too becomes predictable. So the question is how do we, right, continually to leverage, on purpose, the creation of our avatars, which gives us moments outside our regular waking selves, so literally the working definition of ecstasis, to step outside ourselves, and use it, give ourselves permission to explore, and to give others permission to interact with us in different ways, learn and accelerate from that, without that too becoming calcified, right, and becoming one more layer of ego, or one more level of social compliance, right? So this is the invitation on a weekend like this. It's Halloween. We're all, full permission to play out, and an encouragement, which is, see if tonight or tomorrow night, whenever you're or Monday night, whenever you're going out, see if you can say, hey, I'm not just going to kind of slap something together and disavow it or disown it. What if I carefully choose from all the tools, costumes, toys, props, jewelry, etc., that I have available to actually try and articulate what's my avatar? And there can still be a social joke or a literary one or whatever it is. I mean, riff by all means. But see if you can actually say, I'm going to own this, and then experience your night as that person, not as a person pretending to be a different person, and see what happens. So Carmen, let's just take a couple of questions. Carmen, great to see you. You said that's where social media addicts become a social media persona. and actually become emotionally and socially dependent on that character. Absolutely. And there are many people whose real-time lives, have the ups and downs that people do, and then they go online to receive affirmation. The classic one, the absolute classic I see all the time is hashtag TBT. I just posted a flattering picture of me in a bikini or a swimsuit from 10 to 20 years ago, and just wait for the likes and affirmations to come in. That's always a dead giveaway. If anybody is ever, or the frequent changing of profile pictures, so they always get the likes and the affirmations of those things. Right? And it's not like Snapchat streaks with kids who are like posting all cockeyed and sleepy and all this kind of stuff. I mean, they're wildly chosen, and constantly looking for that extra hit of dopamine, extra hit of reward of, gosh darn it, people like me. And so, yeah, that's a big deal, and many people can become dependent on going back to social for the affirmations they may or may not be receiving in their regular life. And by the way, yeah, and hello back from Costa Rica. Great to know. I mean, I don't know what time zone you're on down there. Maybe you're on East Coast time, but always good to connect with folks from other places. So, that is it in a nutshell. It's just to sum up, is to say we are in an age of more readily available play with archetypes, play with avatars, meaning getting to create alter egos. We can do it informally, we can do it casually, we can even do it unconsciously. But if we do it on purpose, just realize there is a phenomenal additional opportunity here to play with this form and to use it. In fact, we were at a Red Bull conference on high performance last year, and one of the things they did at the bar was hand out masks, so the classic kind of masquerade mask, and everyone had to put them on at the door, and I think the one rule of the night was you couldn't ask anybody what they did for a living. So even just tiny little things like that destabilize us, put us into a different situation than our normal fronting. Here's my persona. Hopefully it's carefully constructed, and hopefully it wins me power, prestige, approval, affection, right? Whatever it is. And we can actually start playing both with the light sides, what's an even better, badder ash version of myself, and the dark sides. What's an element that I wouldn't normally give myself permission to engage and play with. So, and Melania, hello from Fort Worth. You guys are a little bit further north. I'm down here in Austin, but great to see you guys as well. So if there's any questions, feel free to jot them in the comments. And really just think, hey, not only in this contemporary realm of expanded psychology where we have the permission to explore much more comprehensive versions of ourselves, and obviously the transgender movement is an easy example, a very contemporary one, but in fact I just saw a video yesterday or the day before, which was basically a gender non-specific person just kind of educating the rest of us on, hey, it's not A, it's not binary, B, it's not about what's between your legs, and C, gender is something that people experience in their brains and minds. And you realize just that alone, even 10 years ago, wasn't possible. So we have more opportunity to consider sort of the whole house of ourselves. And at the same time, because of just technology and the development of culture, we've got a lot more opportunities to play with avatars, to play, and so costumes in some respects is kind of it's the tactic, right, that lets us step into our avatars. But the avatar, this version of myself that I yearn to express or live into, is an incredible opportunity. And so fundamentally, it's almost like, sort of experiential archetypal theater. We get to try stuff on, interact with others if they're willing to play the same game, and learn, get a lot of laps and cycles in very, very quickly, and in very, generally very entertainingly and engagingly, in a way that lets us learn more about ourselves, about life, about men, about women, about humanity, in quick little feedback loops. So as you consider your sort of archetypal play for this weekend over Halloween, know that we are at, there's a rising tide of this possibility for us right now, the ability to check out alter egos and to learn from them, and not just learn what it's like to be them, but to maybe even kind of look back over our shoulders at our regular roles and say, oh, do I need to go exactly back to that on Monday morning? Or is there something from this weekend, something from what happened after midnight, me dancing with abandon when I don't normally, me speaking to someone or being accosted by other people because my costume's so engaging and crazy? Is there something I want to take and keep from that? And so we can play a little bit between these boundaries, between these worlds. We can say, here's my waking self, my normal one, with all my habits and my protections and my assumptions, and then here's this avatar version. where I've allowed myself permission to roam a little further, permission to conduct a few more experiments, maybe step outside my comfort zone in some way, and can I actually use that as a way to kind of go back and forth between worlds? And then I might even choose, and people do sometimes, not always for the best reasons, so big old caveat there, but sometimes people choose to, hey, you know what, I'm just going to forward all my mail to my avatar now. I'm going to be that person. I'm not going to treat it as a costume. I'm going to treat it as vestments. I'm going to treat it as literally kind of holy garb. This is the sign and the signifier. This is an indication of who I am and who I actually want to be. Now, that can be a little culty. That can be a little psychotic breaky. If people sort of are like, like Kurtz in Apocalypse Now, I'm not coming back. I'm never coming back. So be careful of the spiritual bypass version of that, which is I'm hiding out in this imagined fantasy version of myself and refusing to go back to where the dirty dishes and the socks are in the corner. But if we do it, deliberately, lovingly, skillfully over time, it can be a really fun and cool way to expand and explore a little bit more of who we are. So, John, always good to see you, man. And with that, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. We are going out to see Beats Antique tonight, who are masters of kick-ass costumes and funky belly dance and a bunch of other things. So that's what got me thinking about it today. And yeah, so as you guys seek your costumes for this weekend, just consider, hey, what fits me? What actually calls to me? And not necessarily me in my everyday, but me in my most wild, imagined, adventuresome self, and just see if putting your costume together this weekend can be in service, right, of you expanding your room to roam. So once again, guys, it's Jamie from Flow Genome Project. Lots of love. Have a great weekend. Be safe, everybody, and we will see you next week.